You walk into a cave or something, you see on a tablet the sequence 3, 6, 9, and then some other terms. The 4th, 5th, and 6th terms are difficult to read. What did you think the next terms should be? Okay, 12 maybe. 12, 15, and 18. Okay. So what were you going for there? What was the thinking about the underlying structure of what these numbers are supposed to be? I mean, how would you describe them? Okay, yeah, so you might have thought they were multiples of 3, and they actually are multiples of 3. It's totally true, they are. However, I want to show you something. Is it reasonable? It is reasonable, but there's other things that are reasonable too. Let's see what they are. The effect that you observed was Q. That you see the numbers 3, 6, and 9. You're trying to explain why they're there. What was the thinking of the person who wrote them down? We could have P, R, S, and T as possible explanations for why they're there. One reason they're there could be they're multiples of 3, and this is usually what people guess first when they see these numbers. And if that was the case, then the sequence would be, like you said, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and so on. But there are other sequences in math that are equally logical and possible. There's a Fibonacci number sequence. I'll call it a Fibonacci concept, right? And so the way that works is you start with the numbers 1 and 2, and you add 1 plus 2 to get the next one in the sequence. So the next one in the sequence would be 3. Okay, then what you're supposed to do is add the 2 and the 3 together to get the next in the sequence, which would be 5. And then what would come after that? Yeah, 3 plus 5 makes 8. 5 plus 8 makes 13. And so on. These numbers are observed in nature. They make spirals, pineapples, pine cones, flowers, all these things because of the way that natural things grow. They build on each other. So we see these in nature. Totally logical type of sequence. Would that hold true for this sequence here? Like, could it? It could. Maybe that was the system all along. That 3 plus 6 made 9. And then what would come next if that was the system where we add the last 2 to get the next? It'd be 15, and then I guess 24, and 39, and it could go like that. Now, there is no reason for one of these to be preferable to the other. It could be totally up to the whim of whoever had made the numbers up. There are other possibilities too. They could be just random digits. And maybe it's just a coincidence that they were multiples of 3. But really, it could have been something like 3, 6, 9, and then a 1, 8, 4, and who knows. It could be something totally, totally different from contemporary times, I guess. It could be song lyrics, perhaps. The point is, you don't know what was in the head of the person who wrote those numbers down. There could be other explanations that we didn't even think of. But you zeroed in on one of these possibilities as the one that you wanted to go with. And that was P, multiples of 3. What type of reasoning is it? To assume the underlying structure of these numbers. Abductive, inductive, or deductive. And so this is abductive. So let's put that down. What type of reasoning would it be if you assume that because 3 is a multiple of 3, and 6 is a multiple of 3, and 9 is a multiple of 3, when you assume that these terms should also be multiples of 3 because they were, what type of reasoning is that to observe a pattern and make a general conclusion about all the elements? you're taking specific examples of multiples of 3 and saying that that pattern needs to continue, that these need to be multiples of 3 too. If it was the case of song lyrics, then those next terms might not be multiples of 3. You know? What type of reasoning is it really? Inductive. Yeah, it's inductive. All right. So first you found out what you thought the structure was. Then you assumed that the structure would repeat. Then you actually went through the calculations of figuring out what those numbers were. I assume that you did something like 9 plus 3 makes 12. And then 12 plus 3 makes 15. And then 15 plus 3 makes 18. What type of reasoning is it to make an assumption about what the underlying structure is, assume that all the terms need to follow that pattern, and then actually carry out the calculations where you arrive at conclusions that are 100% guaranteed to be right as long as your assumptions were right? What type of reasoning is that? It is deductive.